Hey, good people. Grits or cream of wheat? Who the hell is racist? Does anyone ever ask could they touch your hair?
Black Like Me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Black Like Me.
Hey, everyone. This is Dr. Alex G., and I want to welcome you back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. We have two new patrons. I want to give a special shout out to Mr. Doug Alexander and to Carrie and Scott Sanders. I love you. You're my people. You're my family. Thank you for supporting us and for helping us to continue to bring great programming to the world. The other thing I want to say is recently we put out a call because there are only 4 states in the entire nation that are not listening to Black Like Me. I know. What the hell are they thinking? What the hell are they doing? And so they were the 2 Dakotas, West Virginia, and Montana. Ding, 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 ding. I asked someone to share a link with their friends in these communities. And Montana, you have seen the light. And we want to welcome you to the Black Like Me family, Montana. And so we just got 3 states that are down. So if you know anyone in the Dakotas, and if you know anyone in West Virginia, and I visited these states, write your friends, share a link, encourage them to subscribe and download so that we can make sure that everyone's listening in all 50 states. And listen, I am so excited about this next upcoming guest. And you know what? We just have been on fire in season 3. This stuff just seems to get better and better and better. And so I have a valued colleague and a friend who's going to be on the show today. His name is Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. He's an author of the book, The Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys. He is the founder of the Privilege Institute and the National White Privilege Conference. He received his PhD in Educational Policy and Leadership Studies at the University of Iowa, was a fellow Big Ten graduate, and he's just a thought leader in the area of race. And I'm really fortunate to be able to pin this brother down, to have him in the studios today, just to talk to him about his work, his vision, and just his take on the state of things, particularly the racial climate in America. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., thank you so much for being on Black Like Me today.
Hey, my good brother, Reverend Dr. Alex. It's always nice when I can talk to a brother that's black like me, and that's the actual name of the show.
Yeah, I love it, man. You know what, Eddie? One of the things I love is no matter where you see me, I could be at church, I can be on Facebook Live, you'll walk up to me and say, "Hey, black man." And so I appreciate that compliment. I'm sure people who are not black don't understand that, but that's a high compliment. When you see me, you're always like, "Hey, black man, what's up? What's happening? What you doing? How you doing?" So I appreciate that, brother. I really do. Hey, listen.
Well, you know what's important about that, Alex, is I meet so many folks struggling with, just that identity, man, and the fact that it's important. I think it's really important that we continue to role model the kids that it's okay to be black unapologetically. That doesn't mean you're anti-white,
right,
or anti-anything. And so I just like to really be an acknowledgement of those folks that stand in that kind of spirit, and just remind myself it's okay to be unapologetic.
I want you to know I like it. Hey, we've got this thing that I do, Dr. Moore, that it's called a Black Ice Breaker. And it's just a set of questions that I ask each of my black guests just to kind of loosen things up and to have fun, to show the commonality of our culture. And so you don't have to take a long time on this, but I just want to hit a couple of these questions. Just thinking about your life, particularly growing up, grits or cream of wheat growing up?
Grits, bro.
Grits. And tell me again where you grew up. Florida. All right. So in Florida, did you put butter and sugar or butter and salt on your grits?
We put just butter and pepper on my grits.
Butter and pepper. That's kind of a new category. Butter and pepper. So neither salt, no sugar. I got you. Okay. Next question. Because I think you and I are close to the same generation. I might have a few years on you. But did you grow up in an era where blue jeans needed to be ironed? Did your blue jeans have a crease in them?
If not, you were laughed at and ran out of the party for wearing wrinkled jeans.
Now, I'm living in a casual college town, and so when I talked to my white colleagues about ironing blue jeans, I remember I would put mine in the laundry, in the take them to the dry cleaners or get them laundered. And, you get that tight crease where you have to really fight to put your leg in. Like it goes, shh, as you're putting it on. But my friends used to say, Alex, why are you ironing jeans? So I love the fact that you said you would be laughed out the party if you came up there in wrinkled jeans.
Brother Alex, it is so bad with me. I carry that with me so badly that when I take my shirts to the cleaner, I say I need creases in the sleeves.
I know.
They give me my shirts back, bro. Yes, sir. Yes,
Listen,
sir.
I said
it's still with me.
It's still with you. I want these jeans to stand up. Hey, growing up, did you ever yell at your mom and say, "Get out of my room"?
Not if I want to keep my teeth.
It's so funny when I ask this question, it comes back to the teeth remark. Like I didn't want to be slapped in my teeth. Oh man, I love it. Hey, listen, did you have a Jerry curl growing up or S curl? What's the wildest thing you did to your hair growing up?
Well, the wildest thing for me was just Don Cornelius, man. The bigger the fro, the bigger the bro.
So wait, you remember blowout combs? You remember that day when
Yes,
Con Air had blowout combs?
I did do a little straightening back in the day too, man. I do a little, Cat Williams back in the day when I had a little afro. But I tried to do Don Cornelius, so I lay it back with that straightening comb, bro.
Oh man, I love it. Now, did you do it, or did you have a big sister that did it, or an aunt, or did one of your girlfriends straighten your hair? Who straightened your hair?
My mama really was my hair care person, man. She took pride in that. Yeah.
Oh man.
But my older sister, she could hook it up a little bit.
She could hook it up too. Oh man. Are you old enough to remember the Superfly movie, the original one, the real one? You old enough to remember that?
I am, and Shaft as well.
Wow. Okay, I got you. Can you sing any part of the theme of Superfly, the theme of Shaft? You remember just one line? And this is podcast, so you can cuss. It's okay.
Who's the man? Something like that. Right?
No. Who's the man?
I'm not
Shaft. No, you got it. You got it. Who's the man?
What it used to be, but I know he was something about the man.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That was Isaac. That was Isaac Hayes, right? And then the one line he was saying.
Hayes, that's right.
He had that line. He said, "She said, I'm talking about Shaft. He's a bad mother. Shut your mouth." You remember that part? Shut your mouth. Yeah. Man, I love it. Let me see. Do you remember Jackson 5 Dancing Machine when it came out?
Dancing, yes, sir.
Could you do the robot? You seem like you could do a mean robot, Eddie.
Man, I could do a very mean robot and pop and lock.
All that.
With the best of them.
All that.
Best of them.
Man, listen, growing up in Florida, did you have cousins or know anybody that was named Mookie, John Boy, Main, John, Little Man, any of them kind of nicknames?
Man, my nickname was Potluck. My cousin's nickname was Hippie. I got a cousin whose nickname is JoJo. I got a cousin whose nickname is Scooby. I got a cousin whose nickname is Monse, man. So we had it all.
Y'all had it all. Now, when you grew up, did you find out that some of them cousins weren't really blood cousins?
Well, I'm gonna plead the fifth on that, bro. I'm gonna plead the fifth.
Okay, all right. Because that's right. Oh, man. Let me see. I got just a couple others, man. You're doing great. Hey, when your mother or grandmother used to watch soap operas, if they did they call them stories? Like I got to watch.
They call them stories.
They say I got to my
Nothing
story.
About no Bold and the Beautiful, Young and the Rest. My mama say I'm watching my story.
Man, that makes me miss my grandmother. She'd be like, "Now listen, y'all need to keep it down in there because my story's about to come on." And that would mean the whole line of all my children. She was the ABC story lady. That would be. I remember when it was when they were 30 minutes before they went to an hour. But it was All My Children, One Life to Live, General Hospital, Edge of Night. Those are her stories. Man, listen, a couple of more. Did your family cook toast in a broiler? Did they ever cook toast in a broiler? Because I know people cook it in a toaster. But did you ever cook toaster in the oven?
Yeah, man. I used to put a little butter on the top of it, man, and that hard butter, and that's the only way you can melt it, bro.
Man, that's the only way.
Right in the middle.
Man, I love that. There's just a couple others I like this. Hey, did you grow up knowing what it means what it meant to split the pole? I try to teach my friends, like, hey, you can't split the pole. Did y'all talk about splitting the pole when you were young? Like if you walking down the street and somebody would go on the outside of a tree or outside of a mailbox. That's
right, man. You can't. Yeah, definitely remember that. I definitely remember that. Yeah.
Oh,
split the pole. I still do that, man. I still walk around.
Man, listen. And I know you're athletic and played sports and stuff like that. But growing up, were you trained or taught by your mama and anybody else that black people needed to use a washcloth in the shower? Were you trained properly? Did you grow up using a washcloth?
Man, I tell you what, man, I still wash my face with a washcloth, bro.
Man.
Let me ask you one right quick, Doc. Let me ask you one, man.
Yes,
Did
sir.
y'all play hide the belt back in the day?
We played hide the belt, hide the brush, hide the spoon, hide the electrical cord, the extension cord. We played hide the taser, hide the broken glass box. Yeah, man, we did that. But listen, we had to hide it because Mama did not. She did not believe in children running when they were getting spanking. So like when it was time, it was time. So you had to hide it because I see kids like running and hiding under the bed. Did your mama give you syllable spankings when she would whip you?
My mama was consistent, man. She just got it down. She used to always number it off.
What?
Consistently.
Man, didn't I tell you? Like, they get kind of that rhythm or that cadence.
That's right.
Man, that's what I call a syllable whooping. Didn't I tell you not to let company in the house when I wasn't? Didn't I tell you not to use the toaster when I was away? Man,
yeah. That's that explanation.
She's breaking it down so you know what you got it for. Man, no, that was good. That was good, Dr. Moore. Hey, Eddie, you and I met a couple years ago after I wrote an article called Justified Anger. One of our mutual friends, Pearl Leonard, wrote me and said, you need to get in touch with Eddie Moore Jr. I think she gave me an article you wrote or were quoted in. I reached out to you. We got together in Madison before one of your wonderful white privilege conferences was taking place, and we hit it off right away. We were downtown Madison having breakfast, and we really hit it off. And I fell in love with your work. I'm a great admirer of what it is that you're doing. And I'm going to get to how that started, but let me just ask you first of all, as you were growing up, what's your first remembrance of an encounter with either racial disparity or racial prejudice? Do you remember growing up in Florida where you first noticed that there was, as a child, that there was a difference in how people viewed races? Do you remember that?
Yeah, man. I think one of the most vivid, kind of violent encounters I remember is I was standing up in the bed of a truck and a white guy sped off and I fell out of the back of that truck, man. And I think he really did that just because I was the black kid, in that truck. And so that was one of the things I remember most vividly, violently, that I was fortunate and blessed to live through. And I also remember an incident where my mama just had her money thrown on the counter, and I was a youngster, maybe 8, maybe 10, and just remember how she had to be so graceful and loving in reference to her response that, to be honest with you, Alex G., I think I never let that go. I just really never really felt okay with that in the way that my mama not only was treated, but sometimes I was frustrated with her because she would respond in such a MLK way, a loving way, and I was thinking, how you letting this treat you this way? So those are some of the earliest things I remember.
Wow.
Way back.
In Black One, mothers are trying to make sure you don't get in trouble because anyone who wants to hurt a black mother is to mess with her children. So she's probably thinking about you and all stuff like that. But even to this day, Eddie, I'm extremely sensitive when I put money in someone's hand and they take it. And then I hold my hand out for the change and they put it on the counter like they're afraid they're going to get black if they touch me or catch something. And so it seemed like you were sensitive to the fact that they just put it down on the counter. But I'm sensitive when I put money in the cashier's hand, but they put my change back on the counter and not back in my hand. They don't give it to me the way I give it to them.
Yeah, that's so true, man. I just had an incident this morning where I paid somebody for something and I laid the money on the counter as I counted it out, but I did pick it up.
Yes.
And hand it to them. And I just remembered, it's just ironic you asked me about that, but I just remembered that incident just still being a part of how I want to interact with people, treat people how I would want
definitely
them to be treated.
Definitely. So do you remember what the defining moment was for you launching this career move of the Privilege Institute and White Privilege Conference? I know for us it's a culmination of things that builds up over our lives, but was there a particular something, while you were working on your doctorate where you just said, you know what, I'm going to create this institute. I'm going to train people. This is going to be my life's work. What launched that in your heart before it launched as a true movement?
Yeah, I think two things I think about vividly was one, when I decided I was going to finally get my life back together. I mean, as a drug and alcoholic, recovering 27 plus years now,
Congratulations,
I think,
man.
thank you, bro. Thank you. I think one of the most vivid memories was when I was on one of my last crack cocaine binges. I literally broke my mom's heart because I took her car and I loaned it out to a crack dealer that I knew so that crack dealer could make a run. And the car broke down, so my mom didn't have it the next day to go to work. And so I remember how she, I think, partially operated in denial around my addiction, but it really hit her that time. And I think when I saw the heartbreak in her eyes, I made a commitment that I was going to get my shit together, basically. And I think that was essential because I went from there on to my master's degree. And from my master's degree, I did go on to my PhD, and it was in my PhD program. I had been doing some diversity work throughout my master's degree program, but when I got to my PhD program, there was a young assistant professor, her first job as a professor. And in that class, she said to us, you're not really doing diversity work if you're not factoring in white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression. And so it was really the catalyst for me to do all my research in my PhD process, classwork, around that thematic framework, white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression. And so I think that was the catalyst to really get me consuming the knowledge, the language associated with white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression. And then once I started the White Privilege Conference, the main reason was throughout that master's degree, throughout that PhD coursework, you go to different conferences, you present at different conferences. I was feeling like there was no conference after 2 or 3 times of going to the same conference. I feel like you need another level of challenge. And so after a while, I was picking conferences for their cities, not for their content.
Sure.
And so I felt like there needed to be a space and place that was challenging people, particularly those of us who do the work of diversity, and especially white people. Because white people making money off diversity work, I think, should be doing their work consistently. And so that's really kind of the catalyst of me getting my stuff together, me kind of getting the language and the ideas of the work around white supremacy formulated, and then me getting into a job where I felt like I had the opportunity to create a conference space so that we can begin to talk about diversity beyond kumbaya. I like to call it calculus diversity when I'm describing the White Privilege Conference.
Sure.
It's the next level.
Man, that's powerful. Let me back up for just a moment. How long were you in that space of struggling with crack cocaine addiction? Because for me, this makes your work even more profound because it's showing the strength of faith, community, the resilience of the human spirit. And you and I hung out last week. I think last week we try to always connect up when we're in the same city. I was in Seattle about a month or so, or 2 months ago, when you were out there doing a conference. I stopped by to say hello to you. So we always try to keep in touch. But this is a part of your story that I don't know a whole lot about, and I think it helps to make your work relevant to young Black boys. Were you in that bad spot 5 years, 10 years of addiction?
Alex, Brother G, I say it this way: when I went to college, I think I went to college already somewhat addicted to drinking and partying.
Sure.
Because I was the youngest of 5, and my older brothers primarily all were kind of, partying and having fun because they were a little bit older than I was. And I wanted to be like my older brothers, so I got in the mix of that. So that introduced me into drinking and smoking weed primarily at a really young age. And so I had to remain halfway, with good sense, because if I came home stumbling, bumbling, my mama would check me up in a minute.
Right.
So when I got to college, though, mama wasn't there. So I went to another level, I think, starting at 17, 18, where I was partying at a whole nother, atmosphere when it came to, drugs and alcohol use. So, for example, I never gone to a keg party, when I was in high school, because, I didn't hang out with that kind of group, right? we drank 40s and maybe some Mad Dog 2020, but never did I ever go
Some
to a party
Boom
where they
Farm.
were serving 40 kegs of beer.
Right. Right.
And the idea is you drank to the last man standing, so to speak.
Wow.
So it was a kind of competitive drinking atmosphere. So so when I got to college, I think I went to a whole nother level. Now, keep in mind, I played football, baseball, and basketball for 4 years in college.
Wow. You did
So
3 sports a year, every year in college.
Yes,
at a Big Ten
that's
school.
right. Every
Wow.
year, 3 sports a year for 4 years in college. And because of that, I think that's what kept me, from going full-fledged addict.
Right.
Because I had to practice, I had to train, I had to compete.
Sure.
But once I ended my college career, I mean, it's only by the grace of God that this black man made it through 4 years of college with a college degree.
Wow.
Because there's some stuff, Alex G., I can share with you that I was doing during that time that I could have easily not only lost my life from the level of partying, but found myself in jail, incarcerated, based on some of the things I was doing. So anyway, I say all of that to say, I think that was the start of some of the dark days. But really, when I got back home, I was a functioning drug and alcoholic. And so when I got back home after graduating college, I mean, I was handsome, I was college educated, I was hardworking.
You had that Cat Williams perm. You had that hair fried dyed laid to the side.
Bruh,
you had it going. You had it going on.
I just went to the next level of addiction there because I had a job. I could disguise it, and I just really went off the deep end, man. And getting back with the same people my mama had hoped I'd get away from by going to college from Florida to Iowa, I came back to Florida, got with the same people, and my partying went to the next level, and that's where I went into partying with drugs like crack cocaine, and that became my drug, of course, my drug of choice. And then probably for the next 2 to 3 years, I just went on a serious downward spiral. I mean, Alex G., it was so bad, man. I mean, the way I talk about my road to recovery is with a quick story about Big Brothers Big Sisters. In a nutshell,
sure. I
was working for the organization. I was essentially stealing money from this nonprofit to fuel my crack cocaine habit.
Wow.
And I was blessed, bro. I'm telling you, man, God, someone was looking out over me because the ladies that were over me at my job at Big Brothers Big Sisters, they could have put me in jail for a long time.
Of course they could. They could have made an example of you, but they didn't.
Man, they said to me, listen, you're going to either go to rehab or you're going to go to jail. And it was the opportunity for me to begin my road to recovery. And so that's kind of how all of that happened. But I probably spent a good 2 to 3 years in a serious downward spiral, fully addicted to crack cocaine.
Man, and listen, I know enough because of the work I do. You know, some of the brothers I work with, Jerome Dillard, Anthony Cooper, Aaron Hicks, and others. You know, we work with men and women who are struggling with addictions, and there's a lot of pain and scars and skeletons that go behind it. But what I love about your story, Eddie, is you spent 2 to 3 years being in that dark place of crack cocaine addiction, and today you're known around the country and the world as Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. with a PhD, you know, from the University of Iowa. So you're a reminder that we cannot lower the standard on black boys or black girls, anyone, but this is Black Like Me. We cannot lower the standards on black youth because they're experimenting with drugs and alcohol today, because you're not an exception. There's a lot of black folks who have PhD potential in them, but if we stop pushing them and start judging them about where they are today, they would never get any place. So the combination of your strong mother, the combination of your inward resolve, the combination of those folks at that Boys of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, challenging you to either get some help or go to jail, that flexibility, people pushing you to get better if you wanted to are all part of you becoming who you are today and serving this community. So the reason why I want to hear part of your story is that I want people to understand that what you see young urban youth exhibiting today is not the sum total of their abilities, their capabilities, that there's more to the story. Let's address the pain. Let's give people some support. And let's realize that just because people have fallen off the track at a young age doesn't mean that they can't get back on track and make fire.
Yeah, man, I always say it this way, bruh. It's not where you start out, it's where you end up. And I know I just can't reiterate more and more what it is you're saying, that I never thought, Alex. Yeah, I remember, bruh, when I went to my first recovery class, first of all, I thought this was for white people. Black folks don't go to recovery. We go to church.
Right.
So,
Right.
This is something I'd never had any experience with. This is so critical for me in my recovery journey, and right in line with what you're saying. I never believed that you could live your life without celebrating with drugs and alcohol, without some kind of drugs or alcohol in your life as a part of dealing with, whether it's happy, whether it's sad, whether it was mad, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so it was a real reminder to me. It's a real reminder to me, as you're saying what you're saying, that I know what it's like to get shaped in a way by your environment and feel like this is the way you got to live the rest of your life.
Right.
And so when I'm talking to teachers, when I'm working with teachers, preachers, whoever, keynote speakers, I'm always reminding them exactly what you're saying, especially when they're dealing with that hard-head 7th grader or 9th grader or senior or first-year college student, that you're looking at Eddie Moore Jr., who went from crackhead to PhD.
Definitely.
That you can't give up. You got to keep that light alive, and most importantly, keep that love consistent, because I think that's really what helped me the most, is some key people like my mom who never gave up on her baby.
Yes. Now I hear you, man. It makes me think about your Guide to White Women Who Teach Black Boys. It's a book that you authored with, the number of people, Allie Michael. Is it Ali Michael or Allie Michael?
Allie.
Allie,
Michael,
Marguerite, exactly.
Editors.
It makes me think that, you got some life stories that you can share with these folks, that you're talking with teachers, just what you said. Hey, look, you're looking at these students and you're thinking they're incorrigible, that there's no hope for them. Years ago, I was that kid. Years ago, looked like I was an athlete, had stuff together, but I had pain in my life. My environment shaped me. So when you talk to them, not only about Black pain, but a white response to Black pain and some white culpability in either shaping systems or allowing systems to exist that make it very easy for Black boys and girls to fall into those kinds of traps, or poor boys and girls, and make it difficult to get out by finding support from people who look like them. I mean, the more I get to know you, Eddie, the more I realize your authority to speak as a person who's been one of those kids that people are giving up on, but now you're teaching the teachers. And in your statistics, you said 65% of teachers in America are white women. And so if you can get to these teachers and help them to understand Black kids and Black environment and white privilege, you are really setting up a system for real systemic change. And man, that's to be lauded. I just think it's brilliant how you can speak to the teachers, to the parents of the kids. You can talk to the kids and also name the systemic reality, because these kids aren't just falling into trouble because they're just bad kids. There's some pitfalls that's out there that we got to call out. We can't keep telling kids to stop. I mean, they need to avoid drugs and this stuff, but we've got to also eliminate the systems that create this for kids of color and for poor kids. And your work to really work with to really pour into the teachers who are dealing with our kids on a day in and day out basis, and not just demonizing them, but giving them tools to do a better job, I think is brilliant, bro.
Yeah, thank you for that, man, because I think the point you make about these systemic structural designs, I mean, I have come to the reality doing this work all my career pretty much, that, I mean, there are just going to be some realities around oppression and structural design that may never disappear.
Right.
One of the greatest opportunities we have to counter that is public education.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could have white teachers empowered to know that you could take a crackhead and turn him into a PhD, that's a whole nother level. That's a whole different kind of advantage or possibility that we present in the public school sector. But unfortunately, what we're finding is many of these public school teachers are, flat out unskilled, unprepared,
Unmotivated.
work with this, all the things. In some cases, we have folks who outright hate these kids. But I do think, and I'm trying to be one of the ones that are reminding folks that public education, primarily education in general, but public education, just because that's where I come out of,
Sure.
is one of the key denominators to fighting back against some of the structural systemic design that are going to be, unfortunately, consistent and persistent in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can have empowered school teachers, educators, particularly white women, I think we stand a better chance to produce more PhD, more Eddie Moore stories.
I agree.
And that's what I'm excited about. But I tell you, man, the more and more I've been out and about with this book, I'm finding that there are more good teachers than bad, but
Sure.
there's still some apples out there, bro. That
definitely.
they just don't belong in the school building.
Definitely, and I love the fact that you're focusing on the ones that that want to do better. I'm curious, when your book came out, did white male teachers say, "What about us?" And is there any transferability of what you're saying to white women that can help white male teachers? I'm just curious what white male teachers have said when they heard about your book.
Yeah. Well, they're somewhat shielded to some extent, where I don't think white men in the business of education want any disruption to what it is that they're doing to black boys, which is primarily feeding them this athletic, narrow framework and getting the most out of them physically and not really helping them to reach their highest ability academically.
So using them for the athletic ability to make the baseball, football, basketball, wrestling real strong, but not really investing them as future men.
Absolutely. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to deal with that project, but that's one of my frustrations. However, back to your question, it's a great question, though, because I do have some white men in these spaces that want to do a better job, that want to support. And when they ask that question, what I say to them and what we were purposeful in doing with the book project is we wanted the content of the book to be useful to anybody.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
What we have to remember is it's not just white women teachers destroying black genius, black excellence. We even got some black folks, some folks of color. So bringing some of these negative results.
Sure. So you're writing it so that it can help anyone. That's working with the content.
It address and be supportive and be useful to anyone. But the title was specific mainly because of the statistic. Like you said, when you got 65+% white women, then we got to have something that is going to be trying to come at that population specifically.
I love it.
And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Well, because let me just say this, because we got to be honest. We got to be honest because outside of the classroom, many of these white women have no interaction with black boys. They're not necessarily friends with their children. They sure as heck aren't dating their daughters, not openly, not many times, not at the middle school and high school age. And so your work is profound because these folks have the ability to shape these black minds and challenge them to greatness. But if their experience is only through the lens of disparity and economic and social disenfranchisement and all those other kinds of things, if their narrative is already shaped by media and their own perspectives, they don't come with the tools or the motivation to do something that's different. And so you're bringing something right to their faces that without this tool, they wouldn't know what to do and might not even have the motivation to do anything or might do something that's more harmful if they didn't have this tool. So I think it's really, I love that you're doing it. I'm curious, where do you get the most pushback in your work? In academia, in business, in faith arenas, in political arenas with leaders? When you come in and talk about that there's a systemic reality, it's called racism, it's called white supremacy, there's privilege, and granted, you don't just kick down doors and walk in places. I mean, you're invited in. I'm curious. Where do you find more pushback in higher ed, in public schools, in the business arena, with faith leaders or political leaders? Does one group stand out more than the other in terms of where you traditionally get pushback? Well, Eddie, you have to understand, or what you gotta realize, Dr. Moore, you put too much pressure on us. I'm curious. Where do you get the most pushback?
Yeah, I mean, I think I say it this way, and you know this, being a parent, being, a leader, somewhat of a coach, whether it's a life coach or if you've done some athletic stuff, or in the case of being a teacher. I always say if you're any good in any of those areas, any of those fields, you're going to piss somebody off along the way. I mean, effective educators, effective leaders, because they want the people they working with to grow, they are going to challenge people. And so to some extent, Brother G, I think challenging and pushback from participants, the audience, is a sign of effectiveness. What I really have some concern with is when people get nasty, they get resistant,
Right.
they get in a mindset where they start attacking you as opposed to
The issue.
really attacking some of the challenges that they're facing or that dealing with them.
And now you never experienced that, do you? You never experienced
all
people
the time.
coming at you.
All the time.
Man, that's what
All the time.
all the time.
All the time. And, bro, so the way I look at it right now, it's hard for me to answer that just because I'm in so many of those places all the time. But I will say consistently in all those areas that you've given me options in, I get that kind of resistance. What
Sure.
I always say now is the resistance is usually a third of the pool. There's usually a pool of people
Okay.
who want to learn and ready to go and willing to embrace. And then there's some folks who are kind of like the choir, and they are 100% on board. Here's my strategy now. What I'm saying now is I'm not spending my energy, most of my energy, on the most resistant anymore.
I got you on that,
And so,
man. I got you. Those people need counseling.
When I'm seeing people who are in that space and place, I want to offer them prayer. I want to offer them love. I want to offer them some reciprocity. I don't want to be vindictive, but I do want to be conscious that I'm not killing myself
Right.
trying to transform the most resistant.
Exactly.
Hey everybody, hope you've been enjoying the episode today so far. This is Tyler, I'm the podcast manager.
And this is Eli, I'm the audio engineer for the podcast. And Tyler, I just had a burning question that I needed to ask you.
What's that, Eli?
How do you like your grits?
I am a grits with shrimp and cheese fan.
Oh, you
for
are
sure.
you are fancy.
Throw in some
fancy.
andouille, is that how you say it? Sausage as well? It's the
Oh,
best.
yes, yeah. I like to go for the butter and sugar.
Okay,
So
all right, sounds
I
cool.
like to go full on. A little
Why
bit
do
of
you-
salt. Yeah.
With salt too?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why do you ask that, Eli?
Well, we've got some great opportunities for people to get involved in the Black Like Me podcast. So if you've been looking for a way to get more access to Dr. G, to get some special content, some special features of the show, you can go to patreon.com/blacklikeme and become a supporter of the show, like a friend of the show.
Oh, that's awesome. Just go to patreon.com/blacklikeme, check it out.
Yeah, and we've got those different tiers, including the grits levels that we were just talking about.
Do we have grits with shrimp and cheese?
Oh, we sure do.
Oh,
We
my
sure
goodness.
do.
That's
So
fantastic.
show some love for the show and how you like your grits, or maybe you're just a cream of wheat person. That's okay too.
Yeah.
And check out the website because we've got some really special tiers that we didn't even talk about yet that you're going to want to check out. So we're going to get you back to this episode. Thanks for listening.
You're familiar with the U.S. Black History course that we do here in Madison through Justified Anger. We've taken about 1,000, almost like a little more than the 900 white allies or would-be white allies through this course. And someone asked me, one of our funders said, hey, basically they said, we know that you're doing this and the enlightened white people are showing up, but like, what's your strategy for the hardened, anti-black kinds of folks, racist kind of folks? Like, what's your work with them? And I said, those people need either a good exorcism or they need some counseling. I'm not going to kill myself on those folks. But what I have found is that the people who think they are, who think they're woke or enlightened are the ones that can be more dangerous because they don't know what they don't know and haven't paused to learn what they don't know. So I want to work with the people who at least think they get it and want to do something about it, but I'm not going to spend my energy trying to wrestle down, knuckleheads down in Charlottesville who want to walk around talking about blood and soil. I'm not going to spend my time with, torch carrying white men in khaki pants and trying to convince them of the error of their ways. I want to work with folks who think they get it and help them to be true allies. It sounds like that's what you're saying also.
That's right. And I think with that approach alone, there's so much work to do.
Yes.
And the way you can relate to this, being around a choir all the time. I'm saying it like this: the choir in this time. We're in some unique times. You mentioned Charlottesville, right?
Right.
We're in a time now where white supremacists are marching in the streets of America. 2018, 2019.
Yes.
This is where we are.
You are absolutely. In fact, one of my questions for you is, why do you think people are feeling more emboldened now in their racism? Because this can't just be because of Trump. I know he opened stuff, but you and I would both say, you're from Florida. People forget Florida is the South. Black people have been saying that this stuff is under the surface for a long time. But you're right. People in 2019, white supremacists are marching in the streets. What do you think is making that so acceptable right now? That it's becoming almost the norm? And this is something I thought was over with, man, like in the 50s and 60s. What do you attribute that to?
Carol Anderson wrote this great book called White Rage. This is historically documented in that anytime you've had people of color, primarily black people, succeed in American society, there's always been this white lash, this
backlash,
this rage. Yeah, this rage of response from white people. And so I think that,
that's true.
We have got to take a look at the success that we're seeing, not only of Obama, but we've had a litany of folks of color do some phenomenal things across different fields over the last 25 years. And I think it's been bubbling.
Wow.
And so I think there's been an explosion of white rage, and partly possibly due to some of what we see coming from the president and the way that they strategically. Now, again, I don't know. I'm not saying the president is a white supremacist. I'm not going to go on record doing that.
Sure, I got you.
Because I believe when you charge somebody with that, you got to have substantive, concrete evidence.
Like tweets?
However, there is proof that people like Steve Bannon really put together some strategy around the vulnerabilities of white people during this time where we've seen this explosion of people of color, multiracial people, on the scene of America, unlike many of them have seen it in their entire lifetime.
Right.
And they have been hesitant. They've been nervous about that, maybe even a little bit afraid. And I think that some of the folks like Bannon fan those fires. And so even though I'm not saying the president is a white supremacist, I will say there are white supremacists out there saying, we believe the president supports our cause.
Well, David Duke, we've had people say this. They got excited about it.
That just makes it, I think, back to your question, that makes it a time in which if people are feeling like in the highest office of the land, there's some support for their initiatives. You can see why they're feeling emboldened. And so this is why I want to go back to the choir. This is why not only is it important for us to work with the choir, but we got to teach the choir some new songs during this time.
Some new beats. You're right, because the choir was at lynchings and could say, we didn't do anything, but you brought your children there and made picnics to watch it and didn't stop it. And you kept doing the entertainment. And, I want to add something, just some historical points to what you said, that after the Emancipation Proclamation and we saw the abolition of slavery and the freedom of slaves, but even during the period of Reconstruction, where black people were making significant gains, 16 men, voted to Congress, and black men in places like lieutenant governor, and then black people voting, and then the poll tax and the grandfather clause. You're right. At every juncture where black people moved ahead, either poll taxes or Jim Crow or separate but equal, something happened to stop the black progress. And this is what the book White Rage is getting at. It's not just this idea or propaganda. Historically, we can measure the black pushback. I mean, the KKK really went on the rise. That movement was accelerated after slaves were freed, because now they were threatening white business because they were creating their own income. Or when black people would open a new business in a community, they would be lynched by white people. They would call them on, I'm saying that they whistled at somebody white, a white woman, but really what they were trying to do was to stop black progress. And so we've got to be able to look at history in order to appreciate today that some of the backlash that we're getting is probably what people predicted after President Obama's presidency. Folks either said he's either going to be assassinated or there's going to be some big backlash. But I don't think we thought the backlash was going to be like what we're seeing. In our day and time, the stuff that my daughter has to listen to on media and social media about people of color coming from people like our president, that's like something you'd expect George Wallace to say, back in, segregated Alabama. It's crazy, man. While we're on this backlash, tell me just a little bit about. Then I've got a few other questions for you. Just some of the backlash you've gotten over the town, over the name of your institute, the Privilege Institute, but particularly the conference, White Privilege Conference. 'Cause I know that that's a bit confrontational. Last week I had Robin DiAngelo on my show, and she talked about white fragility. And so, are you still getting pushback from the title White Privilege Conference?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Klan is not done. White supremacist extremist groups, they still continue to target the conference, my organization, myself.
Wow.
And so
in 2019, we're talking about now. You're not talking about your grandfather. You're talking about stuff you're being targeted.
I'm talking right now, bro. And I think, again, it's just such a critical time for the choir. Because if we look at 25 years from now, let's just say we can measure that, we can see that, many of us looking ahead 25 years. I'm asking people, when you look back over your life in these last 25 years that have passed, are you going to say, what are you going to say you were doing during that time?
Right.
Because we can't be doing the same old shizzle that people were doing the previous 25 years and expecting a different kind of result.
Right.
So, I mean, as much as I love you and I love your class, I mean, what I would say to the attendees, one class with the phenomenal, remarkable Dr. Reverend Alex G., during this time, that's not going to be enough.
Right. That's why we mobilize them, because they got to take these classes and then do something, because that's what we call them would-be allies. Because you're absolutely right. Coming and just feeding your mind and being as silent as folks were in the lynching mobs does not help the cause. Because if knowledge could do this, then we would have fixed it with knowledge. People got to put their money where their mouth is, put their behinds and their feet out in the streets. They got to challenge these systems. And that's not just on black people. We need non-black folks, particularly white folks, dismantling this mess, because we didn't build it and they're benefiting from it. They got to help us dismantle this.
Well, this is back to your question when you asked me about resistance to the Privilege Institute, to the White Privilege Conference specifically. I'm not an admirer of the Klan, but every now and then I got to think, damn, man, they are evolving. They are strategizing.
Wow.
They are pooling their resources, right? They're doing more than taking classes about how to oppose progressive social justice movement. And so
they're organizing.
What I'm wondering is, those of us who are on the social justice side, are we doing the equivalent
or more
to those who are on the hate side?
That's a great point. That is a great point.
This is the time, Doc. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm meaning by the choir and new songs. Are we prepared for Bull Connor or Steve Bannon?
Wow.
Like those two may have some commonalities in the rhetoric and the way they talk about it, but their strategies are very different.
You're right.
And I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure if everybody gets to ask you a question, but that's what I would say to you, doing the work you're doing, being a part of what you're doing. How are you feeling about this time in reference to the work of social justice? Are we as organized, as evolved, as resourced as those who are involved in attacking social justice, spreading hate?
Sure. You ask a great question
2019.
because you and I have to do we have this task of one, making people aware that this is a reality, that it has not gone away, that we've got to still keep at bay, not just the KKK people that are saying shut that you know what up, but then we also have some very progressively minded people, or call themselves progressively minded people, who are saying, come on, that's not really the issue. Teachers wouldn't really do that. So part of the issue is not just the KKK, but it's the folks who come to our stuff, live in our cities, but think, come on, the tale of two cities aren't true. This can't exist. So we have to teach people the truth. Then we got to really mobilize them. So when I look at, when I was honored enough to have you let me speak at your white privilege conference at St. Norbert's, I talked about our court advocates program and our court observers program, how we're mobilizing our white allies to think about something that you can do, not just hand out backpacks and food and stuff like that. What can you do to really challenge systemic reality? And so we're challenging these folks. What are the funding circles that rarely fund black-led movements? And how do you get us in the door? We're starting off with the court observers program, but I want us to also sit in on expulsion hearings with black kids. And so I'm trying to let folks know we got to take action. So we may take 1,000 people through the training, and we push every single one at each course is 9 weeks. But we push folks. You're not an ally if you don't act, and you're not an ally if you don't give. Because allies act, they give, they act as advocates, they show up at stuff, they share the information. So we raise the bar really high. And so we might have almost 300,000 people in our city. But I'm looking at who are the handful of folks who get it. They want to be mobilized, and they're showing up doing stuff. It takes 40 volunteers to make the history class possible. But then we're pushing all of them to, take it to the next level. This fall, we're going to be training them in community organizing. Because allies don't just sit around and read articles and pontificate. Allies got to get out to the streets, and they've got to challenge the power structure that cannot be incumbent just on black leaders. And so I'm raising the bar really, really high for those white allies, which brings the number down smaller and smaller. But I'd rather deal with 500 woke white allies than 1,000 and 1,500 people who come cross their legs, take notes at a history class and say, that was really enlightening. Because allies must push. They got to give. They've got to speak up. They've got to challenge systems. They got to write letters. They got to put themselves in harm's way the way that we do, because this is not just for the good of my kids and your kids, Eddie. This is helping their kids.
Yeah, Doc. Rev, this is what I would ask you, man. This is what I'm wondering myself. When I look at being a student, being a learning around really progressive movements or social justice movements, particularly civil rights time, and the involvement of white people, I think this is what I've been contemplating in 2019, 2020. Are they causing more harm to the movement, or are they really aligning, allying, being allies, and pushing for change in the movements? But what I remember in the toughest time, when we were fighting for basic civil liberties, basic human rights, that SNCC, they would be taking white folks, pouring shit on their head, punching them in the face, like getting them prepared for the Klan, white supremacists that they were going to face. Like, it's like, preparing to play the University of Iowa, yet you're practicing against a high school.
Right. Second string high school team.
This is what I'm wondering. Like, are we preparing in accordance to what we're facing? On top of that, I feel like we're dealing with the generation of people who are literally sitting on their asses watching on TV the civil rights movement. They're not even the kids of the people who were going through the SNCC training.
Wow, you're
These
right.
are the kids that were in the suburbs who have basically seen social justice as a kid on the TV.
Right.
And so now we're beginning to encompass their kids, and they're more comfortable sending a tweet than they are standing on the street.
You're absolutely right.
And so what that makes me wonder, man, is is when you say, right, like I'm wondering, like, are you, like you said, you're raising the expectation. I mean, I just think it's important to just, for us, working, particularly with white folks. This is what I'm saying as a part of the White Privilege Conference, the Privilege Institute. As a white person, like you're saying, the expectations are high. I'm trying to take the analogy of, can I cuss at you in your face, call you a nigger-loving cracker, and you fight back with the intensity that is needed to make a change so that we can have progress in this nation.
Right, because we've not arrived yet. We have not attained that yet. So you're saying, are we willing to train people? I think Gil Scott Heron put it so aptly when he said the revolution will not be televised. And he was saying you can't just sit back and learn this on television. You're gonna have to take it to the streets, to the power structure, to the polls to really see some change come. That's what I hear you saying, that we're gonna have to really prepare our white allies to understand what this really means, or what this will require, or don't call yourself an ally, because we need people to really stand with us, because the nature of this, the pushback of this, the sanctions that happen to people of color, black folks, with our lives, our energy, doors that are shut on us because we speak the truth. White people have to know that really happens and be willing to stand with us, or don't call yourselves allies.
Well, again, bro, what we're saying, and on top of that, in addition to that the civil rights allies, white folks, had to train differently for the Klan.
Yes.
That was a visible, physical, violent presence.
Yes.
What I'm saying today, when you have people who could have some white supremacy, alt-right affiliation, building policy in the administration.
Right.
And as an ally, are you equipped to challenge a professor or a policymaker or a student who may be now being trained not to take the seat away from a black kid, but to approach the issue from a psychological standpoint, where you attack the organization of Black Lives Matter or the African American House and say, we don't need that anymore, or why do they get their holiday and we don't get ours?
Right.
Like the intellectual, like there's a different kind of approach in reference to the white supremacist alt-right.
And we got to be ready. We have to train our allies to be ready and to be ready and be as shrewd as those folks. I got you, man.
That's it.
Listen. Let me ask you this one last question. How do you measure the success of your line of work? So I'm not even asking like your work specifically, so there's not all the pressure on you. But I'm just saying, for folks who are listening to us talk, what do we look at to say, hey, we're swimming upstream, but here are maybe I can ask it this way, Eddie. What are some of the things that you see that make you feel that this is why I stay in this work? This is an indication of success. What does that look like, or examples of that look like?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I have to come to grips with is when you're successful doing this work, everybody's not going to like you.
Right.
And this is, I'm talking about the progressive folks.
I listen, man. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I hear you.
Social justice work at the highest level is often isolating work.
Yes, it is.
Even with allies.
I think that's why you and I connect, because we realize we need people who get us and understand us. So you're right. So I'm sorry to me to cut you off. So you're saying it can be very isolating, even with those who consider themselves allies, which is very important for folks who are allies or would be allies to hear. Keep going. Yeah.
So a sign of success is alienation, sometimes dislike amongst the people who should be on board. Mm-hmm. Secondly, that the Klan will be after you. If you're effective doing this work, a sign of success is the people who believe in hate will have you on their radar.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is you will be busy. There is work out there, so I think when you see that you have so much going on around the work, that's another sign of success, that you're doing good work, that people always want you involved.
Sure.
I think you're impacting young people. I mean, I believe the greatest gift that we can give back to our community is positive young people. That's another sign for me that I feel like I'm doing some effective stuff.
Sure.
But I feel like young people are being impacted. And also, I'm being a good family man, a good husband,
Come on now.
I've learned this in our recent book about being a diversity consultant, that, a part of your success has to be your success at home. And I think
self-care.
Yeah, this is one of the things I've talked to you, reached out to you about too, is, I can't lose sight of, what has been a great part of my foundation and me getting to be who I am and where I am today. And that's my spiritual foundation.
Right.
So I can get so busy, and I have, where I can sometimes have many reasons why I'm not praying, why I'm not attending, why I'm not doing some kind of reading or something.
Sure.
To keep me connected and grounded in the foundation that's been essential to me in my success. So those are some of the things that I use to measure as a part of being successful, because we're not like the stock market where you can look at it over a month and see the progress.
You're right. You're absolutely right, man. Listen, Eddie, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your work. I appreciate your writings. I appreciate your social innovation and your willingness to be a thought leader. I appreciate the demons of your past that you've overcome. And I know this by understanding recovery and people I've worked with, that you continue to overcome and wrestle with it. And so just know, man, I value you. And so keep taking care of yourself. Keep taking time with that beautiful family of yours, because we need you for the long haul. And I also want to let you know, Eddie, we're going to put a link in the podcast to your book. And you made a reference about white rage. We're going to put a link to that book as well for people who want to find out about it. And we're going to put a link about the upcoming white privilege conferences. So when people do listen to this podcast, they'll be able to click links to follow you, find out about you, buy your books, because I like to promote what good Black folks are doing out in the community. So folks, my guest has been Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. He is the founder of the Privilege Institute and the White Privilege Conference. He is a force to be reckoned with. He's an author. He's a thinker. He's a husband. He's a dad, and he's an overcomer. And we are lucky. We are blessed to have him on our side in this work. And it's been my pleasure talking with you today, brother. Black man.
Black man, I appreciate you being black like me, unapologetically. I appreciate you.
All right, man. Hey, thank you again. And hey, Black Like Me family, share this. You know people who need to hear the content that's in this. And don't forget, let's hit up those 4 states, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, West Virginia. Let's make this a 50-state party so that we know folks all across this country is listening to Black Like Me. Have a great day. I want to thank Corey Saffold and Marcus Fleming for creating the music for this podcast, my podcast manager, Tyler Nyland, my engineer, Eli Steenlich, my editor, Jeremy Holliday, and our intro and outro are recorded by Cynthia Woodland. And a special thank you to WORT Studios, where we record Black Like Me.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.
Ooh, Black Like Me.